Now, we're looking at the exciting and uncharted world of takedown counters in the sport of jiu-jitsu. Our basic philosophy that we're trying to push on you guys is that you can get much bigger scores with takedown counters than you can with takedowns. So this is a part of jiu-jitsu that you've got to take seriously. If you're going to call yourself a master of the standing position, this is an avenue for you guys to innovate and get big winning scores that no one else is even really talking about. So far, the main method of defending takedowns that we've looked at has been hip checking. The idea behind a hip check was that in order to throw me, my opponent needs to get under my hips and bring my weight onto my toes. So we saw the idea of putting weight on the heels, getting our hips low and turning our hips into his hips and pulling away with the arm and checking him and exposing his back. Okay, that works very well when people perform standing throws. Okay, if Giancarlo stays on his feet, the hip check's a great way to counter. Okay, but in jiu-jitsu competition and many other forms of grappling, judo, sambo, wrestling, a lot of people like to drop to their knees. Probably statistically, the most common form of throw is seoi-nage, variations of seoi-nage. Okay, so if we've got a right-handed opponent working in here and he gets a hold of us, we will often see someone come in and go into a throwing position just like so. And from here, they can really catapult you down to the mat. Okay, it's an excellent competition throw. We'll be looking at it later on in this video. It's a fantastic throw. It does have the problem of back exposure, but if it's done well, it's a very, very viable way of scoring in all forms of grappling, including jiu-jitsu. Now, one problem associated with these throws is that they all need an opponent to bring his hips in front of mine. Okay, his hips have to go in front of mine. The theoretical weakness of these throws is they're very powerful, but they have a very short reach because the hips don't move very far. The hips are very strong, but they have limited range of motion, as opposed to a foot where I can reach hard with a foot for, say, Tai Otoshi, for example. When it's just the hips, they don't move very far. Strong, but limited motion. So we want to take advantage of this with a step around. The idea is that when my opponent comes in to throw, I'm going to step past his hips. This puts me in a side-on position. When my opponent goes to throw me from here, he's not covering my hips. And as a result, we can easily stop the throw. Okay? So if I stay static and my opponent goes between my feet, I'm done. I'm going to get thrown. So what I do is I step outside of his legs to the side-on body position. Okay? Now let's change the angle. When Giancarlo comes in, I step outside. Let's turn the angle a little bit. And from here, what have we got? Belt exposure. I don't have back exposure because I'm not fully behind him, but I got something almost as good, belt exposure. And I go through and I lock the belt. Let's come back this way. So I have the belt and I have the same grip that I had previously. Okay. Now, if my opponent stays where he is and doesn't move, then all I do is I take this arm out and I just whip him forward and expose his back. Okay, so it would take an idiot to stay in that position, don't you think? Otherwise, he'd just take his back. So what do you think Giancarlo's going to do? He's going to rise up a little so that I can't take his back. And when I see my opponent do this, I just step my foot inside his legs. That's all we do. I don't change my hand grip. We're right here. Okay, so going through all this again, we know that with drop seoi-nage, my opponent has a lot of power. If he can drop between my legs, he can throw me. So my whole thing is to step out and expose his belt. If he's an idiot and just stays where he is, we just expose his back. And now we score on the back. But he's not an idiot. I step my foot inside, and now directly from the standing position, I just sit and I pull. My opponent's around the corner, and I end up in a kind of quasi half guard. I switch my hands, I put my head down on the floor, he tries to lock half, we come up into our usual passing positions, and we get the score of the pull into a sweep, a subsequent half guard pass, and then the mounted position. And that's a boatload of points in a very short period of time. So it looks a little bit similar to what we worked previously, but you can see there's a subtle difference. The difference is you're going directly from the standing position. We're not pulling guard on this guy. We're going directly into a counter throw. So once again, we start off right versus right situation. As we come up and lock. I see Giancarlo come in for his drop sailing. We step outside, we expose the belt. If he's a moron and stays where he is, we just whip everything on by, and then from here we go and we score on the back. Okay? However, if Giancarlo goes to recover, it's going to give us an opportunity to step our foot in. Now I just pull my body in underneath him, and we just lift him up into the air. When he tries to pull half guard, we're in a position now to pass. Okay? So, looking at it now as it would be in a competition situation. Two athletes come out. I've been watching this guy. This is our third fight of the day. I've seen him throw several people with Seoinage, so I know he's good at it. I know he favors it. Okay? As he comes in, he gets his first grip. We come in. Now, I know what he wants. He wants the second grip. As he comes in, I give it to him. He comes in, drop Seoi. I anticipate and sidestep. I grip. I see him go to recover. We take him over. Hand goes in. And we score. In this way, you've got a really practical way to counter one of the strongest forms of attack in standing position in Jiu-Jitsu, the drop Seoi, drop Seoinage, and go in and get big points as a scoring method of defense. Now, we're going to go further into our upper body takedowns. Let's distinguish between what we've seen so far. Giancarlo, we'll come close to the camera, fellas. Giancarlo is a right-handed athlete. From right versus right situation, if Giancarlo stays on his feet with upper body throws, his intention is to bring me into a good throwing position. Like so, okay? My intention is to rob him of that. When he comes in, my hip's lower than his hips, hip check, arm comes back. He goes to throw me from here, it's not going to happen. And we saw from here a lot of counter offense. We also saw that our opponent has the option of dropping throws. Say, for example, drop Seoi. These are strong throws, but they have the defect that they have a short reach. So when my opponent comes around, I step outside of that reach and I expose the belt. And as a result, we're able to go into strong counters, score big points, either taking our opponent's back or going underneath them and throwing him into half guard passes and mounted position. There's another category of upper body throws, the so-called ashiwaza or foot techniques, where my opponent attacks with, say, Kouchigari. Hang on a second. If I'm heavy on my feet, the way so many jiu-jitsu players are, if I'm heavy on my feet and he attacks with Kouchi, boom, straight down. Okay? If I'm heavy on my feet, my opponent attacks with Ouchi, boom, straight down. Okay? You see jiu-jitsu players, they stand like drunks on their feet, heavy with their feet. Okay? It's hard to defend the ashiwaza. The heavier I am on my feet, the easier it is for him to trip and put me down. So what I want in these situations is mobility. Rather than me being standing like this, where it's very easy for someone to knock me down, I want to be moving, okay? And I want to have an ability to pull feet up off the ground. So I keep a more upright body position. If my feet are heavy because I'm bent over, it's very hard for me to pull feet off the ground. You can only pull feet off the ground when your body's upright. Okay, and then we can start countering the various ashiwaza. When he steps in for, say, Kouchi, when he steps in for, say, Ouchi, when he steps in for, say, Kosoto, we can move our feet. Because I'm upright and moving, the feet are light, and I can step out of his attempts to attack my feet. Now, you're going to notice something very interesting happens every time I step out. Watch Giancarlo's balance. Let's say Giancarlo comes in for, say, Kouchigari. When he steps in and I step out, see that stumble? His weight's on his toes. If I continue to move away from Giancarlo, you pull him into an extended position on his toes. Do you guys remember from volume 1 of Feet to Floor, the hollow man? The hollow man was the person who had been brought onto their toes with a hollowed out body, like so. And a hollow man can be thrown effortlessly with tomoe nage. When my opponent's body hollows out, It's so easy to draw him onto his toes. And if I disappear underneath his body weight, it's so easy to send him through with Tomoe-nage. My contention to you guys is simple. When someone goes after your feet, I want you to learn to exhibit good posture. Good posture is relatively upright posture. I'm protected from takedowns by the fact that I'm holding on to his sleeves. So if he were to shift to, say, a single leg, it's hard because you're controlling the sleeve. Okay? In situations like this, he switches to a double leg, it's hard because you control the sleeve. So that's not really an option for him. His best option are the so-called ashiwaza. But if I'm upright and mobile, every time he attempts, say, kouchi, I can step out. Every time he attempts the ouchi, I can step out. And then I can pull him into the hollow body. And if I can pull him into the hollow body, I can throw with Tomoe-nage. Okay? So what's our general strategy? Okay, I've looked at this guy, and I've seen what he does. Every competition, he's got a good kouchi-gari. He's got a good ouchi-gari. He likes kosoe. This guy's a footster. He likes to trip with his feet. I know what he likes. We come out, we grip up. I get my first grip on. I deny the second grip. I don't want him getting a second grip. It's going to be harder for him to throw me now. Now I put my second grip on. I get my nice light upper body. He goes in kouchi. I step out. I dance away from him. And I counter with Tomoe-nage. You get a nice score. Later in the match, we go out of bounds. We come back to standing position. He's pissed off. He's like, oh, really? Counter my kouchi? This time I'm going ouchi. We come out. He gets his first grip on. I deny the second hand. It's going to take him longer now to get his throw working. I put the second hand on. I see him come in ouchi. I step out. I dance away. I convert him into the hollow body. And as a result, we get our score. Now he's really pissed off. Later in the match, we go out of bounds. The referee pulls us back up to standing. He's like, okay, kouchi didn't work, ouchi didn't work. I'm going kosoto. He comes in, I step out. I step again, I pull him into the hollow body, and we get a nice Tomoe-nage finish. Okay? Can you see what's happening, guys? If we exhibit good posture and good mobility, we can step out of our opponent's ashiwaza or foot techniques. Then any movement away from him will pull him into the hollow body position. And if you can put your man into a hollow body, you can throw him with Tomoe-nage very, very easily. It's a superb way to score off a takedown counter in ways that you can readily bring into your game in a short period of time. Now, we're working our way through takedown counters. Our philosophy of takedown counters is that countering takedowns represents one of the great scoring opportunities in the sport of jiu-jitsu. So far, we've looked at upper body takedowns. So, for example, we looked at situations where Giancarlo came in for upper body takedowns on the feet. And we saw that the standard method of defense involves hip checks that lead into back exposure. Okay. We looked at upper body takedowns where the opponent drops to two knees, seoi-nage, and we saw the idea of a step around that generates belt exposure. We saw the idea of upper body takedowns that involve foot techniques, the so-called ashiwaza, and we saw that if we maintain good upright posture, we can hit step outs and then pull an opponent into a hollow body from where we can go into Tomoe-nage to score. Okay. Now it's time for us to look at what is statistically the most common form of takedown attempts in the sport of jiu-jitsu. These are lower body attacks. The two most common by a landslide are single legs and double legs. Also, there's ankle picks in there as well, but we'll start with single legs and double legs because statistically they are the most common. Now, guys, before we can begin this, we have to start looking at some legal concerns because there are rules in the sport of jiu-jitsu that are extremely important and determine how we act when someone goes to tackle our legs. One very important rule is that if my opponent grabs a leg and has his head to the outside, like so, I am not allowed to grab my training partner's belt with either a down grip or an up grip. And from this situation, bring my opponent's head down towards the floor. This is illegal and will result in a disqualification. So once again, if my opponent grips my leg with a head to the outside, this only applies to a single leg, not a double leg. Okay, I am not allowed in the single leg situation with the head to the outside to grip the belt and employ takedowns which direct his head towards the floor. Now, guys, I've consulted with numerous international referees on this, and there is no definitive answer or widely agreed upon answer that I am aware of at this point of time in late 2020. The idea is, the question I always ask is, okay, where does this leave a move like sumigaeshi? Okay, and sumigaeshi, I have my training partner's belt, he's got the single leg, like so. Sumigaeshi doesn't really direct your opponent's head to the floor. It's a genuine throw, and it has an outstanding safety record in international competition in judo and sambo, etc., etc. Half the referees seem to say this is illegal because the head is on the outside, you're grabbing the belt, and half seem to say sumigaeshi is an exception to the rule. Okay, now that's a tough one if you're in competition, right? You're looking at the referee, is this guy on my side or not? Will he let me do a sumigaeshi? Sumigaeshi, for those of you who aren't aware, is a simple throw. Let's move back a little bit. And sumigaeshi, the idea is it's a lifting throw using my leg that sends our opponent over like so. Okay, it's a beautiful throw. That's actually my personal favorite throw, right up there with Tomoe-nage. It has an outstanding safety record in competition. It's been used for generations in judo. I've literally never seen anyone get seriously hurt with it in the gym. It's a lovely, effective, and very safe throw. But I hate to say it, but under the current rules of jiu-jitsu, there's at least a 50% chance if you try that particular variation of sumigaeshi with the head on the outside and you're grabbing the belt, you could be disqualified. Now, if you only train in the gym, and this is not a concern, absolutely use it. I think it's a fantastic throw, and as I said, I've never really seen anyone get hurt by it. What is illegal, definitively illegal, and should not be attempted even in the gym, are drag downs. In a drag down, the idea is you're trying to spike your opponent's head into the ground. This is particularly true when you take an underhand grip. It's bad enough with an overhand grip, it's even worse with an underhand grip. And the idea is that from here, I'm just going to do this very gently, Giancarlo. I'm just going to sit and just pull my opponent head first onto the ground to generate back exposure. Okay? There have been some nasty incidents around the world where people got serious neck injuries using this method. This is unacceptable. And I'm actually happy that they banned this move. I think it's a dreadful move. It's a low skill move. It could be performed much better in much safer ways. I've had a very close friend of mine, Braulio Estima, was badly hurt by this in a no-gi version of the move, and resulted in a broken neck. He had to have a long surgery to repair his neck. There's been some terrible incidents in competition. I'm happy the IBJJF banned this move. Okay, it involves a deliberate spiking of the opponent's head into the ground. I don't see any reason why that should be allowed in the sport. Okay, unfortunately, sumigaeshi with the head to the outside, which is a beautiful, highly effective, and very safe move, got caught up in the whirlwind of the belt grip, and unfortunately, you would have to be pretty careful using it in competition because half the referees will tell you it's illegal and the other half will say it's okay. In the gym, sumigaeshi, no problem. I let my students use it, never had a problem. It's a very safe and beautiful throw. But in competition, you got to be worried about using that. There's probably better things you could do. If the head is on the outside, I wouldn't recommend grabbing the belt. So that's something that we're going to have to work around when we work leg takedown defenses. In particular, in situations where your opponent holds one leg with his head to the outside. Okay, don't worry, we'll look at some ways to deal with this, but that is something that we'll keep in mind as we go through this series. So keep your mind on this rule. It becomes important for how we go to defend leg takedowns and tackles in the sport of jiu-jitsu. Now, guys, we're going to start looking at the idea of defending lower body takedowns, in particular single legs and double legs, since they are statistically by far the most common lower body takedowns in the sport of jiu-jitsu. We're going to look soon at specific takedown defenses, but I wanted to start by looking at general principles of defending the lower body takedowns. And often these general principles prove to be more useful in competition than the specific techniques. It's generally easier for most people to remember general principles than a lot of details about specific moves. Okay, first things first, when we come out, you can tell a lot about what your opponent's intentions are by how they stand. If someone is standing bolt upright, it's going to be pretty hard for them to hit single legs and double legs. Okay, this is much more likely now he's going to look for upper body grips and then upper body throws. His stance is conveying his intention. But if I come out towards someone who's in a jigatai, like so, and looks like he's in a position to explode forward, this is a time when I've got to be pretty concerned about lower body takedowns. He's either going to pull guard on me or he's going to shoot for my legs. Those are the two main options when someone goes into these defensive bent over jigatai postures. Okay, so I'm reading my opponent's posture. First things first, I want to use my head as one of my main lines of defense. If Giancarlo consistently gets his head lower than my head, he's in a position to shoot to my legs at any given moment. Okay? So the first thing we want to do is align the level of my head with his. Every time he level changes down for a shot, I want my head to match his. So when he goes in to shoot, my head forms an impediment. As he goes further into the shot, you're in a position to make it very hard for him to go through into a successful takedown. So that's your first thing. Okay? Second thing, whichever is his lead hand is going to be the most dangerous hand to you. That's going to be the one which shoots and goes in and controls your leg. It's going to be the one he'll use in double leg takedowns. It penetrates through, boom, and makes contact. Okay? So when I come out towards my opponent, I will very often come through and control my training partner's shot hand. As he goes into any form of shot, you control the shot hand, you stay outside the shot hand, you're pretty safe. Every time he goes to commit to a shot, if I use a combination of head position and control of the shot hand, it's very hard for him to go in and shoot. Okay, you'll take him out of position, and from there you can go into your counter offense. So your head position and your control of the shot hand are two of the most valuable defensive instruments you have against lower body attacks. Start by reading your opponent's posture. If you see he's in a crouched posture, there's a good chance he's either interested in pulling guard or shooting on your legs. Come out, match head position, and go in and control the lead hand. As much as possible, stay outside of his shot hand. The more I can generate motion outside of his shot hand, the harder it's going to be for him to go in and shoot successfully. He shoots, it's hard for him to be successful under those circumstances. Okay? Second big consideration. Your opponent, in order to successfully take you down with the lower body takedown, has to connect his head to your midsection. Let's have a look at this. If Giancarlo shoots on my leg, single leg, he's got to connect his ear into my midsection. If Giancarlo goes in for a double leg, he's got to connect his ear to my ribs. The head has to make contact, whether it be double leg or single leg. If there's no contact of the head, there's too much space. And it's going to be very easy to either sprawl or kick out. Okay? So one of our big things is, don't let his head make contact with your torso. If you can do that, you're going to shut down a lot of single legs and a lot of double legs. So what we'll often do is I'll look at my opponent's stance. Let's say he's got his left leg forward. That's going to be his shot leg. So if he's interested in a single leg, I know as he tracks in, there's the penetration step and there's the contact of the ear to my torso. So what if I took my hand, and as we started off with him, I matched head level, and I came out and I put a hand on his lapel in front of the collarbone. Now when Giancarlo goes to shoot, I stiff arm. He goes to make contact, and my arm is an impediment in his way. Okay, the harder he drives in, that loose connection makes some very powerful defensive sprawls or step outs. Okay, again, if your opponent can't make contact with your body, your midsection, with his head, it's going to be very hard for him to complete either single legs or double legs. Same thing with the double leg. I see he's got his right foot forward. Okay, that means this ear is going to have to make contact with my upper body, just like so. Okay, so if I took, for example, a cross grip on my training partner and he went in for a shot, it's going to be tough. You're going to be in a position to push the head down and move away from your opponent. Because you're making it very hard through that stiff arm action connected to his lapels to get the head contact he needs to be successful. So one of the things we want to consistently shut down is his ability to get solid head contact with double leg or single leg. If he can do that, he can be a problem to us. So as we come out with our opponent, we get our head position as our initial buffer, our first line of defense, and then we get that hand in front. Now, when he goes into a single leg, for example, it's hard for him to make contact. Relatively easy for us now to step on out, okay? Now, here's something interesting for you. As long as my hand is in front of the collarbone, this is very effective. But if my hand is over the collarbone and he does that same shot, even the gi won't protect me. I need my hand in front as a post. He goes single leg. If I'm over the top, he goes single leg, he gets the contact he needs. Okay? So there's a battle. My battle is to keep the hand in front at the collarbones. His battle is to send my hand over like so. And now he can make contact. So we need to consistently make sure our hand stays in a sound defensive position. So as I come out with my training partner, he's going to be looking to take my hand over the top. I'm going to be, every time that happens, I'm going to be looking to move away and bring my hand back in. Okay, he sends the hand over the top and we bring it back in. He goes to shoot and we control his head down towards the mat. Do you see that dynamic, guys? Keep the hand in front of the collarbone. You're going to have a very good stiff arm defense that makes it much harder for your opponent to make that head to upper body contact, which is essential for his ability to take you down with single legs and double legs. He's always going to be looking to get your hand over his collarbones. And if he can do that, he can definitely take his body into a good attacking position. Okay? We're always looking to keep the hand in front, right there on the collarbones. He goes for, say, a double leg, for example. As he comes in here, it's going to make it very hard for him to get that head contact he needs to be successful. Okay? Now, a natural question for you guys to be asking is, okay, what if he wins the battle? What if he gets my hand over his back and he gets to my damn legs? He beats my head, beats my hands. What do I do now? The next line of defense is this belt. Whenever someone goes into, say, for example, single legs, and he makes a shot on my body, and my hands are over the top, you will notice now that there's belt exposure. When we come through and we score the belt, let's turn this way. So when I can't keep my hand in front, I come in here and I get to the belt. Okay? Now, once we get the belt, I want belt up, head down. So as Giancarlo comes into a scoring position up on his feet, we want to consistently push the head down while controlling the belt. Most of the time, we're interested in getting our foot to a secure hook. Let's turn this way, buddy. On the outside of his leg. So when he goes to lift my leg, it's quite difficult. Here, he has a better chance of controlling the leg. So I want to come in and push the head down and control the belt. He goes to walk me down to the floor, and it's quite difficult. If his head is up, legs in the middle, very easy for him to walk me down to the mat. Okay? So, once again, he beats, he takes my hand over the top and beats me to the leg. Immediately I come down to the belt, he comes up, and we're pushing our training partner's head down and getting the foot in. Okay? Now, as he goes to walk me down to the floor, it's quite a difficult thing. You've got an excellent chance now of going into your counter offense from situations like this. Okay? So those are some general principles and considerations, guys. They're not specific moves, but they're general considerations that will make it much easier for you to defend these commonly seen double legs and single legs. Now that we know the general principles, it's time for us to start going into the specific techniques. One of the most common techniques in the sport of jiu-jitsu for takedowns early on in the match is a double leg. My opponent's in stance, right versus right. What he's looking to do is to penetrate and get a hold of both of my legs, just like so. Then from here, coming in, buddy, from here, he's got good upright body position. It's pretty easy for him now to start turning the corner, walking straight down to the mat like so. It's a beautiful way to finish the double leg. They can come up into lifts, but the most common thing we see is people turning, cutting the corner, and putting people down. It's a good low amplitude way of not only securing the takedown, but going into strong passing position as well. Now, what should we be looking to do? Well, He wants my legs square and being pulled in so that he can put me butt down to the floor and secure his takedown. We want everything going the opposite way. So let's say my opponent has successfully beaten my hands, okay? We don't have the grip here on our training partner's lapel, etc., etc. First, we want to match head level. He beats my head and gets underneath. As soon as you see him coming in, we want to make sure we get those legs back and away, okay? I'm going to take my legs back and I'm going to go to my shoelaces. If I go back to my toes and he starts coming up off the floor, my toes stick in the mat, driving, and down we go, okay? I want my legs going down and away. The only way I can do that when he makes that shot is to put my shoelaces down on the floor. Watch, turn this way. My shoelace down on the floor. As he comes into the move, the shoelace slides down the mat, okay? Again, if my right foot sticks in the mat, just walk into me and come up onto your feet. I stick into the mat and I get taken down, okay? I want everything going down and away. He wants everything getting pulled in and up. So from here, shoelaces, go buddy, down to the mat. And as a result, we're able to walk down and away. He wants to recover by bringing his knees in and holding my legs. He wants to bring the knees in closer. The closer the knees come to his elbows, the more now he can bring the leg up, bring his head up, and recover. Okay? Now I want to make sure his knees never get closer to me. So watch my right shoelaces. He comes in, pull. And from here, come around, I post on his knees. As he goes to walk his knees in, I post. Go in. And this way I can just continue to walk down and away. Off that walk away. From here, I bring my knees off the floor. I bring my hand in behind his arm. I bring my second hand around the corner. And I come in and I lock up. Sitting up, buddy. I lock up like so. Now, guys, please understand, this would have scored in the sport of wrestling. This move does not score in the sport of jiu-jitsu. You don't score defensive takedowns in jiu-jitsu, okay? I went behind him. In wrestling, I would have scored 2 points. In jiu-jitsu, you scored 0. However, you're in the perfect position to knock him down and go in to score 4 points with the back. So in jiu-jitsu, don't stop until you score with the hooks, because jiu-jitsu doesn't score defensively the way they do in wrestling. A go behind doesn't score in jiu-jitsu. Scores in wrestling, not jiu-jitsu. So don't stop till you get your hooks in, okay? So once again, right versus right. He shoots for the double leg. We come in, shoelaces down. Everything goes down and away. He goes to recover with his knees. So I block the knees and my shoelaces continue to go down and away. As a result, we're in perfect position to come up. Let's turn around the corner. You can come. Watch how I post on his tricep. Post. I come up, block, grab the hamstring. I walk around his body. Turn around, Jim. From here, I grab cross grip, low. I'm not trying to strangle anyone. I don't come up high. I grip low. From here, I post the floor. I bring him down to a hip. I lock a seatbelt, penetrate with my knee, use my foot to lift. Bottom hook goes in. If he goes to bring his knee and elbow close together, I lock my feet, separate. Hook goes in, I score 4 points. Double what you score for a takedown, okay? Remember, it's not enough just to break him down to turtle position. In jiu-jitsu, you don't score until you get your hooks in. So one more time. Right versus right situation. From here, he shoots. If I stay on my toes and he drives up off the floor, I get taken down, okay? So I've got to get my right shoelace to the mat. Boom, just like so. Now I arch, block, both shoelaces down to the mat, down and away. From here, I use a thumb post on the tricep. I come up off my knees, put my forearm behind his arm, grab the hamstring muscle so that I'm putting pressure forward. He goes to stand up, the pressure's forward, grabbing right there at the hamstring. Now I come around behind and cover the hips. I pass the lapel and lock. He goes to stand up on me. We pull him down to a hip. He can't recover and stand up. I lock his seatbelt. I penetrate with my knee. And from here, it's a pretty simple thing for us to go in and get our score. Okay? It's an excellent and practical way to defend an initial double leg shot in the sport of jiu-jitsu. The action of stopping a double leg is quite a bit different in the sport of jiu-jitsu than it is in wrestling, for one obvious reason. In jiu-jitsu, you're wearing gi pants. When you wear gi pants, your opponent can grab the fabric of the cloth and create a very strong connection to your legs, which will often make sprawling quite difficult. Okay? If we're in the sport of wrestling with no gi pants, we grab double legs right behind the knees. But when we're engaged in jiu-jitsu, you have the option of grabbing cloth. When he goes into a sprawl, you can grab that cloth and create incredibly robust grips. Even when his legs go back a long way, you'll be shocked at how you can just come up into a standing position and start taking people out of balance. Okay? That's something you don't have to worry about in wrestling, but it's a real problem for you guys. Okay? A natural question for us to be asking is, well, what if my opponent latches onto my freaking gi pants and sprawling just isn't working? He's come up off his feet and he's about to dump me and score 2 points. What do I do now? You have to go into a form of defense to double legs, which is unique to the gi grappling arts. You used to see this back in the old days in judo when they used to allow double legs, and it's very, very viable for the sport of jiu-jitsu. Okay, this is a pant grip reversal. Remember, guys, what we said, that if my opponent has his head on the outside, we're not allowed to grab the belt and spike their head into the ground. That's illegal. Don't worry. This move avoids this legal concern. So we've got a right-handed opponent standing against us, and he shoots the double leg. As he comes in, we realize, oh shit, he grabs the gi pants. Okay, so that's going to give him a very robust grip. My hand can go anywhere around here. Okay, I often grab right here. Just raise your elbow, buddy. I often grab just like so. Okay, it's an easy grip to get. There's a lot of flap in the cloth there. Now, as Giancarlo starts grabbing the gi pants and coming up to his feet, you're going to find sprawling doesn't work anymore. Because he's grabbing the gi pants and he's threatening to pull me in. So what I'm going to do is if he's going to grab my gi pants, I'm going to grab his. I'm going to grab him right here. I now have 2 grips. This one and this one. It's illegal to grab inside the cuff. That's not allowed. So grab outside the cuff, like so. As Giancarlo goes to take me down, I'm going to take his foot up off the floor and lift it. As he goes to finish the takedown, I'm going to circle my inside knee down to the floor and dump him. As Giancarlo goes to recover, I'm going to sprawl. I'm going to walk around his body, and we end up, coming up, buddy, in our favorite position. Walking up like so, breaking him down to a hip, realizing, of course, that we don't score in jiu-jitsu until you get the 2 magic hooks in. And then you score twice as many points as he would have scored for his double leg. You get 4, but he only would have got 2. Okay? Now, I don't know if you guys have ever been in a situation where you had a friend who got attacked by an angry dog. When you see a dog attacking another person, it's natural for you to try to get between that person and the dog, right? You want to get in between and protect them. Well, that doesn't do much good and often results in some nasty bites. The smart thing to do is to grab the dog's hind legs and lift the hind legs off the floor and take away all of their leverage and connection to the ground, and then walk them backwards and fling them over a hedge or a fence or what have you. Same thing with double legs. A dog, when it goes to attack you, is very powerful in a forwards direction, driving into you with 4 legs driving off the ground. But that same dog, put your hands on the floor, has its hind legs very easily lifted into a wheelbarrow position. Now Giancarlo has no connection to the floor other than his hands. If he tried to finish a double leg from here, it'd be impossible because he has no connection or drive through his legs to the floor. So the same principle of stopping a dog from attacking a third party works here. Now, that's exactly what we're doing. I can't stop him, depends. I can't stop him at the front. So as he comes up, I lift up on the legs. And that creates situations where you attack his connection to the floor, the same way you would with a dog. As the connection with the floor breaks, when he tries to finish the double, it's got no connection to the floor. Now I just step, knee drop, and turn. Off that position, he has no drive, no connection. Now I can score away. And now I can go behind. Okay? And that's how you deal with the problem of the gi pan grips. So let's have a look at this all right from the start. We've got a talented opponent who's using a specific form of double leg for the sport of jiu-jitsu. He's not just grabbing a double leg, he's grabbing double pant grips, which massively complicates the problems. Conventional wrestling sprawls won't work when someone has double pant grips. We've got to use a method specific to this problem. From right versus right, Giancarlo beats my hands and head. He goes in, boom. There's my first grip. Right here. He comes driving up off the floor. He's pulling me in. I go in, I score the pants. As he goes to pull my legs and I pull his leg, we're fighting for position. He's trying to finish on me, I'm trying to finish on him. I knee drop and get his hips down to the floor. Got to hold on, buddy. It's hard. And you scroll down and away. He goes to get up. We're in behind. Pull, score, 4 points. So guys, there you have a jiu-jitsu specific method of dealing with those annoying pant grips. The pant cuff reversal, which relies on the idea of destroying your opponent's connection to the mat in the legs. Takes away his drive, takes away his ability to suck the legs in. It creates a situation where you can drop his hips to the mat in a very disadvantageous position where you can score on him. Now, we're looking at the idea of defending lower body takedowns, double legs, single legs, etc. We've seen a few commonalities here. If my opponent comes in on the single leg, he needs to connect his head into my body like so. He needs to beat my defensive hand, which is in front of the collarbones. And if he can do that and get that head connection, it's pretty easy for him to come up. But you'll notice that as my hand goes behind him, he's going to generate belt exposure, where my hand goes through and collects my training partner's belt. I wouldn't recommend reaching across to the far side. I would stay on the near side of the spine and lock it on the belt just like so. Now as Giancarlo goes up to his feet, we're going to hold a defensive position just like this. I'm going to take my foot across and hook on the outside of my training partner's leg. As I hop into a throwing position, I'm going to attack with Harai Goshi, where I spring off my base leg and take my training partner down by reaping on the outside of his single leg stance, and from the end, we drive our man straight down to the mat. You can go down with varying degrees of intensity. Some people like to throw and jump on top of their opponent and crash their body weight into them. I leave that up to you. So we start off, our training partner gets a lapel grip. From here, he goes through and sweeps around into the single leg. He beats my hand and comes up into single leg situation. From here, I go through and I seize my training partner at the belt. I take my foot out. If he locks tight with his feet, there may have to be a little bit of sparring here as I move with my training partner, move him around, and then I take my foot across and I make a good hook. When we make the hook, let's make sure we hook tight in here. Don't just have your leg relaxed. Make sure there's a good connection and you're putting pressure on the outside of his leg. Okay? So, from here, we start off, he makes connection to my upper body and comes sweeping around the corner and gets to the leg and connects his head to my upper body. The price of this is he will expose his belt to me. So as he comes up off the floor into the single leg situation, we find ourselves in a situation where I can put my shoulder next to his ear, bring my foot across and make a good hook. Now I bring my foot in close to a good throwing position. We drive our man down with Harai Goshi. One more time. Single leg situation. He sweeps. He comes up. I have the belt. My ear is next to his. Don't be in a position like so. Bring your ear down to his. Make a good contact on the outside of his leg. And drive straight down. Let's look at foot position. When my opponent comes in here, Watch my support foot. The further my foot is in here, the less leverage I have. Once I make my connection, I want to come across his body so that my support foot is fairly close to the leg that I'm going to reap. And then we take our man away, we get a good reaction. So once again, Giancarlo uses the most popular form of sweep single in the sport of jiu-jitsu, which involves a lapel grip, just like we looked at in volume 1 of Feet to Floor, and then a sweep where he beats my hand and gets underneath me to the leg. This comes at the price of belt exposure. As he comes up off the floor, I step away and I bring my head down into good position. I bring my foot through, hook, tension in the leg. Now as I pull him in, I hop across my training partner's body. We drive straight down with Haraigashi. Okay? It's a very useful way to counter the single leg and get your own positive upper body throw game as a counter. Now, we're looking at the idea of defending the single leg. Our opponent comes into arguably the most common form of takedown in the sport of jiu-jitsu, a sweep single. Often they go to control the lapel. Sometimes they just go straight to your leg like it's wrestling. Either way, Sumigaeshi will prove to be a very effective counter. When I see my opponent come out and sweep into the single leg situation, we know now that it's too late to stop him with our standard beginning grip here in front. But we do have some good news for you. There's going to be belt exposure now, okay? Because my opponent's head is inside my body, I'm allowed to grab the belt and throw with Sumigaeshi. If my opponent's head was to the outside, it may be legal, it may not be legal. It'll depend a little bit on the referee's interpretation. I wouldn't recommend that in a competitive setting. But because the head is to the inside, there's no problem whatsoever with this. As my opponent comes up to his feet, we're going to go into our standard defensive position just like so. I'm going to take my hand and I'm going to grip my training partner at the wrist, right underneath, and grab that wrist as he holds me, okay? From this position, I'm going to bring my head across to this opposite shoulder and I'm going to drop between his legs. As I make that drop, I'm going to throw with my right foot over my right shoulder. It's a simple penetration where I take my foot between his legs and just hop all the way through and send the man over and finish with my head higher than his head. So in the scramble that ensues, as he turns towards us, we will always get the under position. As he tries to come up and recover, he runs into that underhook, which more or less guarantees us a good solid pin at the outcome of the technique. Now let's have a close-up on our hand position here. When Giancarlo's in on the single leg, what I want to do is take his wrist all the way in here. You can also take a grip on your training partner's sleeve cuff. When you grip the cuff, make sure you don't put fingers inside. That's illegal. So we have to grip here, okay? And this grip is perfectly legal, not this. So once again, he picks up the leg. I go either the wrist, that's one good option, or the cuff, making sure we grip 4 fingers outside like so. I normally go to the wrist because it's a very fast grip to get, okay? So once again, we have an opponent in front of us. As we play standing situation, he beats my hand, sweeps the single leg. Unfortunately for him, he's exposed his belt. As he comes up, I do a good job of putting my shoulder inside his ear. If he puts his head underneath and ducks, I can't do Sumigaeshi now, okay? At least in competition. So I put my shoulder right in front of his ear. He goes to duck, can't do it. He's locked in place. Now I grab his wrist. From here, he goes to move me around, etc., etc. I hop, then I penetrate inside his legs and send them over with Sumigaeshi. Because I'm higher than him with my head, when we get into a scramble for top position, we'll always have an advantage. My head and chest are higher than his. As he tries to get up, the underhook makes it very difficult, and we end up with a nice pin. Okay? Guys, let's make sure when we hit this move, my penetration step should be at least as close as his feet. Okay? If I fall just where I am, we get a poor Sumigaeshi. He bases out, and you can end up in very poor position like so. It's important that we go through underneath and we hop towards him. So you'll see when I start off in like so, my foot will go through underneath and give us a good elevation that takes our man over, okay? It's a fantastic way of countering single legs. Let's make sure we do it when the head is to the inside. and as a result, we'll be able to score off our opponent's single leg with a beautiful reversal and get top position. Now, we've been looking at the idea of defending the most common form of leg takedown in jiu-jitsu, the single leg, where our opponent goes to our lapel and then sweeps the single like so. Very often when this kind of thing happens, we're going to get opportunities to pass our opponent's head around in front and put our hand on the back of his head. Okay? Guys, if the head's in good position, don't try to do this kind of thing. Don't reach with this hand on a well-positioned head. Now he just locks his hands and just pulls my leg away. I'm going to fall like very, very quickly. Okay? So it's important when he gets in this position, I want to take the forearm on the outside and pass his head to my other hand. Okay, now I access my training partner's belt. I have the head down and belt exposure like so. As he goes to finish the single leg, many of your opponents here will go to lock their hands. Okay, it gives them a stronger grip. We're going to go with our shoelaces down to the mat and try to sprawl. But this kid is strong and he pulls my leg in. And you're like, oh my God, I can't get my sprawl going on. When we see this, we're going to go into Senkaku. I bring my foot around behind my training partner and lock in just like so. I take my hand to the floor and my second hand in here. I'm going to use my leg to expose his elbow and armpit. And as a result, I can scissor my legs through, just like so. I bring my foot up to my training partner's armpit like so, and I lock the figure four, making sure I hand adjust to get an excellent triangle lock. When my opponent goes to yank out, very, very difficult. And I can squeeze for a strong strangulation. In addition, once I get this grip, he'll probably pull his arms free, I can get a hold of my training partner's hip and ankle, and I can take him across my body and into a pin. We can lock up our training partner's gi jacket. Look how I take a Kimura grip. I take the jacket through and lock. So you've got a very strong form of pin. Now from here, I grab my training partner's pants, strong, and come up into top position and pin this man. Okay? From a pin like this, you're going to be able to control and dominate and finish the takedown. Okay? So once again, we have an opponent who does a good job of sweeping the single leg and coming in like so. We do a good job of passing the head and bringing it down. We've exposed the belt. I try hard for the sprawl. He pulls the leg in, can't sprawl. I stuff the head, take my foot and lock with my ankle right in behind his armpit. I commit to the floor with my hand and I expose his armpit and slide it down to my hips. As a result, I can bring my foot up, right up to the armpit and hand assist. We lock the figure of four, hand assist until it's tight. First move here is the strangle. Second move is to send him on by. We lock Kimura, lock it up with the jacket. We get a good grip, pass through, and end up in a beautiful pin across our training partner's side. And this is a very practical way to strangle opponents, to come in on that single leg and go down to the mat with you. Very, very useful. Now, looking at the use of the jacket to tighten up this Senkaku. When we first put our foot in, you'll notice that my knee and my ankle are very, very close together. When we commit down to the floor, I pull and straighten out my leg so I can slide down to my hip. As a result, my foot comes up well into the armpit and we pull everything in close. When he goes to pull out, it's difficult. If my legs are like so, the head can rise and problems. Okay? So we want to make sure we turn everything down on the back of the head. He goes to rise with the head, very, very difficult. Now we lock the figure of four. We use a hand assist to tighten everything up. And from here, your first move is the strangle. The second is the reversal. From here, I grab a hold of my training partner's heel, like so. I pull his hips towards me, and we take our man over the top. Okay? Come in, get our lock, we send our man over. From here, legs down. From here, we get the Kimura grip. from this position without releasing the Kimura. I don't let go. He straightens the arm and he's gone. I lock Kimura and I keep everything over the forearm. He goes to straighten his arm. It's still locked in place. So I don't let go and lose the arm. I simply snake everything over the top. He goes to let go. So he goes to straighten out. Can't. I break my hand gripping any piece of cloth that's relevant. You can even use the belt. I'm going to demonstrate here. Okay? I pass over the top and cinch it tight and lock. When he goes to straighten his arm out, it's stuck in place. Now I put my hand inside, pull myself up, and into a strong pin across side. He goes to work his way out. The Kimura holds him in place. Okay? You have a post hand. If he turns to his left, post hand prevents it. If he turns to his right, the Kimura prevents it. You can settle down. You can stay on your knees. You can step over your training partner's head, whatever you want. The main thing is you've got that very, very strong connection through your opponent's jacket to his arm. You dominate the end of the takedown. We've been working our way through these 3 volumes of Feet to Floor, covering 10 standing skills for the sport of Jiu-Jitsu. When people talk about standing skills in Jiu-Jitsu, of course, the most common one they think of is takedowns, where you're standing in front of an opponent. Takedowns from the front. We covered those comprehensively in volumes 1 and 2. Volume 1, we looked predominantly at the takedowns, which are the quickest for students to learn. The goal was to get you throwing people or taking them down in 3 to 6 months if they're your own size and skill level. Volume 2, we looked at what I believe are the best adapted takedowns for the sport of Jiu-Jitsu. We put a heavy emphasis on the so-called ashiwaza or foot techniques and the so-called sutemiwaza or sacrifice moves, in particular tomoe-nage, sumigeshi, and ukiwaza. I wanted to add more takedowns in Volume 3 of Feet to Floor, even though the primary interest of Volume 3 is in fact the other skills of the standing position outside of takedowns, things like pulling guard, countering guard pulls, etc., etc. I wanted to look at takedowns that involve a little more risk. Remember that Jiu-Jitsu in general is a sport that punishes risk. The riskier the takedown, the more danger there is of things like back exposure, where an opponent can score on you. Always understand that Jiu-Jitsu gives you the same 2 points for any form of takedown, from the riskiest to the least risky. So for most students, I believe it's smartest to focus on the low-risk takedowns that we covered in volumes 1 and 2. Nonetheless, many of you are interested in takedowns that do involve a little more risk, but increase amplitude. So there's a bigger potential reward, okay? So you can throw an opponent with more authority. Now, this isn't going to score you any extra points in Jiu-Jitsu. High amplitude throws in Jiu-Jitsu score the same amount of points, 2, as low amplitude throws. However, they can send a message to an opponent that you're throwing them with authority. And that can have a psychological impact in a Jiu-Jitsu match. There's also just a sense of satisfaction of hitting a nice clean throw that sends your opponent flying down into the tatami. There's an appeal to it. It's a beautiful skill. So let's spend some time at the end here of Volume 3 of Feet to Floor looking at some of the takedowns which involve putting someone down with a little more authority than the takedowns we looked at so far. Perhaps a little more amplitude in the throw. They will involve more risk. There'll be slightly more back exposure. But I'm going to try to modify them for you so that there is less risk and they're still, I think, very workable in a Jiu-Jitsu context. And we'll start off with them right now. Let's look at one of the most commonly used takedowns in the sport of Jiu-Jitsu. This is drop seoi-nage. Now, the classic drop seoi-nage, often seen in judo, it's a wonderful throw with great amplitude. It's one of the most popular and most effective throws in judo. It does come at a bit of a price for the sport of Jiu-Jitsu because it maximizes back exposure. So if I have an opponent in front of me and I go for a right versus right drop seoi, in the sport of judo, what we're ultimately looking to do is to separate our training partner's feet and create situations where I throw my body inside my training partner's legs. Okay, we create a situation where I penetrate between his two ankles and come into a situation where really you're lifting underneath the man. It's a lifting throw where I bring his head down, my body up, and we drive through into the throw. It's a beautiful throw, but it does have some obvious problems associated with it if you're standing behind me, Jim. When he has 2 feet on either side of my body, if the throw should go wrong, where I've essentially put myself into a rear mounted position, okay? Plus, I have to be able to lift and drive off the floor. It's certainly doable, but it involves quite a bit of athletic movement on your part to be able to drive up off that kneeling position and come up and throw your opponent with momentum. What I often use is a modified throw where, separate your feet, I don't go between my opponent's ankles. I don't penetrate inside the line of his ankle line, okay? I stay outside the ankle line and I throw across him at 45 degrees so that if I screw things up, there's partial back exposure, but not full back exposure. It also makes it much easier for me to snap him down rather than lift, carry, and drive him up. So this modified seoinage is not as strong as the true judo lifting seoinage, but it has much less back exposure and requires a lot less athleticism. The idea is that from situations like this, I'm going to use my drive leg, pull his head down, and throw him across at 45 degrees, like so. Okay? So, what is this going to look like? What is this modified drop seoi going to look like in jiu-jitsu competition? Let's look first at the right versus right situation. When my opponent comes out and grips, we know that a big part of our game is taking his grip away so that his power hand is taken away from our body. When he tries to relock the power hand, it's quite difficult. Because we're right versus right, I'm going to encourage you to work with a cross grip. Okay, don't worry, we'll look at right versus left soon, then we'll use straight grips. So I'm going to move outside of my training partner's power hand, and I'm going to take a cross grip on my training partner. Now from here, I'm going to put his hand to the outside so that I have 2 hands on him, including control of the head through this cross grip, and he just has 2 hands on my sleeves. So he does not control my head. I control his head through the cross grip. He doesn't control mine. Now I start a movement that squares him up to me, just like so. Off that square up, I'm going to take my body into this position here, where I just level change like so. And all I'm going to do is just lift up on my training partner's arms and throw my body right here in front of him. From this position, we just whip everything straight down to the floor, and we end up with a nice throw, right versus right, okay? You can see that I'm not lifting Giancarlo. It's not really a true seoinage. Seoinage means to carry on the back. I'm not carrying him on my back at all. In fact, my back never really gets exposed to him. So it's not really a true seoinage. It's one modified for the sport of jiu-jitsu. So we start off right versus right. He comes in, makes his grip, we snap his grip off. I dance to the outside. I get a hold of that cross grip. From this position, I pull his body around the corner. From here, I step in on my training partner and we make like a partial entry. I don't penetrate past the ankle line and I don't go between his legs. I just bring my body right in like so and put him down. It looks a little bit like the seoi snap that we saw in volume 1, but it's not a true seoi snap. In seoi snap, we put our opponent forward on his toes. And then from here, I dropped and put him down. Okay, almost like an old classic throw from the old demonstration sports in judo. Now we're looking at this idea of pulling our opponent on, and then right from here, just level changing and just throwing our body in. So I'm throwing forwards at 45 degrees. Okay, going solo, our intention is to step in like so. Grip, pull, step, and throw. You guys know I have a hip replacement and a crippled leg. if you're getting older, you don't want to be jumping into Seoinage and damaging your knees. The method I'm using, you slide in on your knees. So it's actually very easy, even for someone like me with a hip replacement and a crippled leg. When I pull, I just slide. You can see I'm not crashing on my knees. Pull, step, slide. Okay? Gripping. Take the grip off. I come in, pull, step and slide. Right versus right. Snap the grip off. Bring him in. Then right from here and whipping through. In competition, we come out towards our opponent. He comes in. From here, we go straight on in and throw. Okay? Very practical in the right versus right situation. Not much back exposure. No need for you to explosively come off the floor and lift. A modified Seoinage that works well, right versus right, in Jiu-Jitsu. Now, we're looking at a modified Seoinage. It's not a true Seoinage because we're not penetrating inside our opponent's legs. We're not lifting them up off the floor. It involves less back exposure. It has less amplitude and power, but it has enough to certainly snap a strong opponent down to the mat. And it's relatively low risk as far as Seoinages go. And it's pretty simple for us to learn it. Essentially, what it involves is a footwork pattern where we bring our opponent onto us, and then from here, we just slide down to the mat and put him down with our head going forward and putting him down at a 45 degree. We just looked at it right versus right. In the right versus right situation, we typically like to take away his power hand and then take a cross grip. This will make it relatively easy to control our opponent's far shoulder and throw across the body. In the Kenkyotsu situation, from here, as he comes out and makes his grip, we want to go under our opponent's arm and lock up in the inside undergrip, like so. This will give us an ability to joust and move with our training partner. As we move around the mat, if he goes in on me, you have a good ability to shut him out. At any given moment, you can break his grip away. As he fights back for the grip, we're going to look to go across his body and get underneath our training partner and lock on just like so. He will probably grab your sleeve, and you will now find yourself in a situation where you have the inside undergrip, a good control of your training partner's sleeve, and as a result, a great ability to bring him forward and get your elbow to his sternum. Because I have the inside undergrip, it's relatively easy for us to go across our training partner, lift and expose the armpit for my elbow. All I want to do now is bring his hips onto me. The biggest problem with Seoinage is his hips are far away, there's too much distance to cover, and you fail. So what I want to do is I want to bring his hips to me, like so. Now it's so easy for us to go in on our training partner and we throw across our training partner's body. Okay? So once again, I have a left-handed opponent coming out towards me. As he comes in and makes his grip, I go inside my training partner's arm and I take the undergrip. From here, there's probably going to be a period of jousting. I want to take his hand over the top, like so. I go underneath and get a hold of my training partner's sleeve. From here, I bring his hips in towards me, like so. Now we're in the perfect position to go through underneath our training partner and right away into a nice modified Seoinage down to the mat, throwing at 45 degrees with minimal back exposure. One more time. He comes out, we go inside. I go through and get my second grip. I draw his hips onto me, like so. I make that limited step across, and now we're in the perfect position to slide our body on through. My leg comes up, and we end up with a nice throw down to the floor with relatively low risk, relatively low back exposure. Competitive setting. We've got a left-handed opponent. As we come out and engage in grips. From here, go through, I shut him out, getting the inside undergrip. I bring his body onto me. Now we're in perfect position go straight on through and throw with our modified seoi-nage. Now we're looking at the idea of throws that involve a little more risk, but a gain in amplitude. Our general rule is, if you spread your feet facing the camera, if we go between our training partner's ankles, this puts us in a position of considerable risk. Okay, and if the throw should fail from a position like this, you're in some deep trouble. Okay, so generally we favor throws where we stay outside of our opponent's ankles. Okay, in the previous move we looked at a seoi-nage, a modified seoi-nage, where we threw across the body like so. Less power, less amplitude, but a little safer. Okay, another good example of this is taitoshi. Now normally taitoshi is done in the standing position. It's typically done in situations like so, where we draw our training partner on, and then from here we put an elbow up in our training partner's armpit, we step across and drive into a throwing position like so. Okay, and it's a fine and classical throw. What I generally find is most students really struggle with this, because the key to a good taitoshi is that I have to keep my hands in front of my chest. What happens is most students go to make the turn of the taitoshi and the hands get caught behind the chest, and when they step across they feel like they have no power. They try to get the foot into a throwing position, their hands are behind their body, the opponent easily counters them backwards or steps around the throat, trips my foot or what have you. Okay, things get a lot easier if we drop, because now when I go into the throw I can go underneath his arms, and as a result we can get into a position where, because I'm under his arms, I can get my foot across his body a lot easier. Okay, and then from here our whole thing is to throw around the corner and drive forward. This throw has some advantages over the seoi-nage variation that we looked at. In the seoi-nage, my opponent can step around me and avoid the throw. In the drop taio, it's much harder for him to step around. There's a blocking foot, and as a result you get excellent completion at the throw. I love to play the modified drop seoi and the drop taitoshi against each other. Play with both of them. You're going to find you get great results. So let's look at a situation where we come out with that training partner. I want to deny him his power hand. Okay, it's hard for us to hit a good taitoshi if it's connected to our body. So I take the hand off. I push the hand across, and then from here my second hand goes on and takes my training partner like so. Okay, I have a little bit of play in the gi. I don't grip too high. It's like so. He's going to try and put his second hand on me, and we have control of our opponent's sleeve and lapel. So I control his head through my right hand, but he doesn't control mine. Now I pull my opponent and square him up to us, just like so, so that I end up in a situation where we're 90 degrees across. That means that my rotation is relatively small. It means it's unlikely my hands will be caught behind me in a weak position. I should be able to do a good job of keeping my hands in front. Now, as I step in with one foot, I jump off that foot and I go into a position down to a knee, with my leg going across the body. Now I throw in this direction, around the corner. And as a result, we end up with a nice taitoshi down to the mat. So once again, a taitoshi that most people find considerably easier than the classic taitoshi. We come out, right versus right. I snap his grip off. From here, I assert my grip and get to a situation where I control his head, but he doesn't really control mine. Doing the throw directly from here would be pretty difficult. So I make everything a lot easier by lessening the throwing angle. I step in one, I jump, lift, and then at the same time, come down to my knee, get across his body, so that we can drive on through with a nice taitoshi action. Okay, it's a beautiful way to throw in competition and sparring. So once again, right versus right situation. He comes out to make grips. We intercept. From here, I put my second hand on. I bring him around the corner. I come step in on my training partner and drive straight on through with a nice drop taio. Okay. Now this is a wonderful throw that can be done from many different grips. Some of you will find that putting the hand here will result in situations where the hand can be left behind a little bit. So many people like to do it with a cross grip, and this too is very useful. So right versus right. We snap his grip off. I come in with the cross grip, bring him across. Now from here, we hit exactly the same throw. I throw my body through, and we drive straight down with Tai Toshi. Okay? I generally find that right versus right, most people have an easier time throwing with the cross grip than the straight grip. That changes when we go left versus right. Left-handed opponent, Kenkiotsu situation. He comes in and makes grips. I go inside, under. You can do it from here, but it is more difficult. I generally recommend take the inside under grip. I go through, get my second hand on. It's going to be easier now because I have less angle to turn to make the throw in the Kenkiotsu situation. From here, I pull my training partner onto me. We're in the perfect position now to go across our man, drop and drive. And as a result, we get a nice Tai Toshi down to the mat. You're also going to find you can hit the move out of waist grips. We have an opponent here in front of us. We hand fight. I cross grip, pull, I take a waist grip here. Okay. This waist grip can be a very useful throwing position. I put my head in the inside. He tries a fireman's carry. My head position makes it impossible. Okay. I go in. I get a hold of my training partner's sleeve, and I'm in the perfect position now to go across and drive with Tai Toshi. Okay. We can also hit it with an overback grip. He takes a waist grip. I go over the top and grip like so. So he's got the under grip, I got the over grip. I take head position. I go in on my opponent, and once again we find ourselves in the perfect position to drop and drive down with Tai Toshi. Okay, in this case the drop Tai Toshi. So you can see that drop Tai Toshi is a very adaptable throw. Many different grips. Right versus right. Basic sleeve lapel. The key element is this idea of going across our man, dropping, driving, and down to the floor. If you feel that the hand grip is a little difficult, you might come in, cross grip. Off that cross grip, we drive down to the mat. If he stands opposite stance, inside grip. We go through, bring him on, drop, and drive down. He comes up and throws an arm over my back. I go underneath grip. And from here, not so difficult for us to drive down with Tai Toshi. He takes the under grip. I go over the top, lock him out from situations like this, and drive down with drop Tai Toshi. A very adaptable throw. I find my students learn drop Tai Toshi 10 times faster than they learn the classical Tai Toshi. It's much easier for most people to perform, and they get good results in a very short time. Let's look at a throw, which is very dear to my heart because it's a throw that I relied on a lot because I'm a cripple. I have a crippled leg, and now I have a hip replacement on top of that. And so many of the classical throws, which involve balancing on one leg, are extremely difficult for me. Okay, so classical Osotogari, for example, is a difficult throw for me because from here, when I stand on my crippled leg and try to hop into position, it's not easy for me to hop on a crippled leg. Harai Goshi, Uchimata, other good examples. Okay, when I step in on my training partner, I'm hopping on one leg. It's not an easy thing for me to hop on my crippled leg. So what I did to get around this is I used a throw which is often classified as Seoi Toshi. The way I did it was really a hybrid of several throws put together. Harai Goshi as the entry, Seoi Toshi as a fall to a knee, and Tai Toshi as a block on my opponent's leg. Essentially, it looks something like this. What I would do is I would enter with something that looked a little bit like Harai Goshi. I would step and then hook onto my training partner's leg. Then from here, I would still a slide down into a Seoi Toshi, down to my knee and block. And then I would spring the leg, kind of like a Tai Toshi, and put the guy down. Okay. The reason I like this is because the weight goes off my crippled leg towards my good leg. And it enabled someone like me who can't hop on one leg and has dreadful balance to throw people from the security of being on two legs, having stability of two legs. It also made it easy because it allowed me to drop to the floor and use falling body weight rather than Kazushi skills to take someone down. So it would look something like this. Right versus right situation. I would take away his power hand. Then from here, I would assert my grip upstairs. I would lessen the angle by getting to a situation where I was 90 degrees to my opponent. Then I would just step in. As I made this step, I would hook onto my training partner's legs and then just drive across and end up in good position over my opponent. Okay? And this served me very well. Interestingly, years later, one of my most talented students, George St. Pierre, became interested in upper body throws. He was like, John, I've got a good single leg, I've got a good double leg, I've got a good high crotch, but I can't throw anyone upper body. We worked on knee picks, which he became very successful with, and this version of the throw modified for no gi. What I had him do is gripping from an underhook here and gripping across the body, starting here, going here. Then he would hit exactly the same motion. He would step, hook, and then drop to a knee, like so. Famously, he hit this modified throw on Matt Hughes in his third fight with Matt Hughes in a UFC fight. It ended not only with a beautiful throw, but also a side control pin from where he finished with an armbar. And it was the only time George ever hit a forward upper body throw in his athletic career. So I've always had a deep attachment to this throw because it worked for me as a cripple and it worked for him as a stellar athlete. I believe it can work for you too. The reason I have so much faith in it is because it's a fairly easy set of skills. First, the gripping skills. Take away his power hand. That's not very difficult. Assert your own grip. Fake one way, fake another until you get to the lapel. Bring him into a situation where you have to minimize the turn. I only have to turn less than 90 degrees from here. When you step in, make an initial level change, step, and then a hook. And then from here, just drive down to your opponent and end up hip to hip. What I recommend to you, don't stop until your hips touch his hips. Don't do this. Don't hook and then stop out here. There's too much distance and he comes in with the legs and you end up with both a weak throw and a poor finish. What you want to do is from the throw position, as you first come in on your training partner, you go in and you make your hook as you drive forward, hip to hip, and end up right here in good position, okay? Now, you can also, as I said, hit this from situations where we're gripped up with our training partner. He goes over my back with his grip. He's interested in, say, snapping me down, for example, okay? So when I see that, I go around his waist, and I get my grip just like so. Now from here, it's an easy thing for us to go in, just like George St. Pierre did against Matt Hughes. He goes in and makes his hook, drives down to the floor, and you end up hip to hip. Okay, it's a beautiful and effective throw. One safety modification, guys, make sure you throw forwards at 45 degrees. Don't go across your training partner's body and hurt your training partner's knee by falling on it. Make sure you go out here at 45 degrees. It is a good, safe transition to the mat. Okay? So once again, competition situation, we come out with our training partner. As we start wrestling the position, we snap his initial grip off. From here, I come in on my training partner, we make an initial hook, drive, and down to the mat we go. Okay? Very realistic way to modify the throw, which lets us throw from the security of two legs on the floor instead of hopping precariously on one leg. Now we're looking at throws that offer greater amplitude and some degree of risk, but we're trying to mitigate that risk through tactics. Okay, so we're trying to increase the amplitude while keeping the risk within acceptable parameters. We don't want to go crazy with risk in the sport of jiu-jitsu because, as we've seen throughout the Feet to Floor series, jiu-jitsu in general punishes risk. Okay, so yeah, we are looking to increase amplitude, but we're trying to do so in ways which keep it within the bounds of common sense for the sport of jiu-jitsu. Now, one throw which offers tremendous amplitude and which you can use to throw people who are considerably bigger and stronger than yourself is ogoshi. And one of the great things about ogoshi, it is generally done with your arm under his arm, which means it is minimal back exposure when you perform this throw. Okay, you have the underarm, so worst case scenario, there's almost no chance of your back being exposed to your opponent. Unlike throws where I hold the lapel, where the elasticity of the arm action means that he can access my waist, and from here, if the throw fails, there's back exposure. Okay? In the case of ogoshi, because my arm is around the waist, even if he could get to my waist and pull me through, my arm action prevents my back from getting exposed. But when my elbow goes across the body, that's when back exposure begins to occur. In ogoshi, your elbow is behind the body, so there's no back exposure. Interestingly, ogoshi presents more lifting potential than almost any other throw. There are very few throws which enable you to lift with the power of ogoshi. As such, it's a splendid throw to use against bigger, taller opponents. So for example, if you're fighting in an open weight division, it's an excellent choice of throw. It is also a fascinating throw because it's not only a great throw in itself, it's also a great counter throw. If I have an opponent who's, say, a left-handed opponent, okay, and he throws an arm over the top, and from here he's got grips. If he brings his hips across in front of me and throws, this is a big problem for me, okay? But every time he takes the high grip, I come in, I take the low ogoshi grip. Now, every time he tries to bring hips across in front, we turn away from him. We get opportunities to bring our hips in front. And what you often find with ogoshi is that you can get into a jousting competition with your opponent, where every time he goes to bring hips in front, you turn in and hip check on him. When his hips go back, you follow his hips and you get an opportunity to throw him. Okay, so ogoshi is an excellent offensive throw and also an excellent counter throw. And because ogoshi relies on the strength of the hips to get underneath our opponent, it provides tremendous lifting potential to take big, heavy men up and into a powerful throw. So it's a wonderful, wonderful throw in open weight divisions. Minimal back exposure and great both as an offensive throw and as a counter throw. Now, the big problem with ogoshi is how am I going to get my arm around my opponent's waist if he doesn't want me to get it there? It's generally pretty easy for us to access an opponent upstairs, going over the arms, etc. But if my opponent has tight elbow position and a bent over stance, it's pretty damn difficult to get underneath his arm and get to his back. That's why with ogoshi, it's one of those throws where you learn it on your first day in jiu-jitsu, but you hardly ever see it in competition because most people don't know how to get to that grip. So we need a strategy to get to the grip. Here's one of my favorites. I come out towards my training partner and I offer him a sleeve. Then I go through and I take his sleeve. I break the grip away and I take my opponent's arm across the center line. He knows I want the back. Okay, so what do you think he's going to do? He's going to pull the arm away from me, right? But I take my arm and I go around and I score his back. Now, with my elbow lower than his, when he goes to pull his arm out, he's got to go over my arm. And when he does so, he gives me the grip that I wanted. Okay, so that's one intelligent way to get to the grip. A second way to do it. When you first learned ogoshi in your first day in jiu-jitsu, you probably got taught to grab the far side of the hip. Okay, that's wonderful if your opponent's not resisting you. But in competition, that's almost never going to happen. Okay, it can happen, especially if my opponent goes for a throw on me. Yeah, I can realistically get to the far hip now because he came towards me. Okay, but if he's playing away from me, dude, it's going to be freaking hard to get to that far hip. So a more realistic way to operate is to take grips shallow, right in here. Okay, I don't go across to the far side. I just take my hands up, I clear his hand away, and I just go right in here. And then I work from this position. Okay, and I do my ogoshi from there. Sometimes I will walk my hand from an initial grip and walk it across his back. So the initial grip will be very shallow. And then I go 1, 2, 3, and I go a little bit deeper. I typically don't go all the way around. Unless my opponent goes for me, then I might go all the way around. Okay? But most of the time, I advocate a shallow grip for combat versions of Ogoshi. So once again, we come out towards our opponent. I go in on the man, I give him an offering, he goes to grip, like so. We pull the arm across, I expose his back, I get that shallow grip, he goes over the top of his arm and leaves me with an Ogoshi grip. Now I lock up the second hand and I start pulling and bringing his hips onto me. Now, in Jiu-Jitsu 101, you got taught something like this. Stand in position like so, around the foot. Step 1, step 2, hips across, and lift, okay? You're never going to throw anybody like that in a competitive setting, okay? Instead, his foot should be back. If I stand like this against someone who knows what they're doing, they're going to throw me with Uchimata. I'm going to get thrown, not him. So I keep my hips in front and I keep my head position here. So when he goes to throw me, I can keep walking around his body and pull him onto me. Now when I enter, I step my foot here to the top of the pyramid. And then my second foot comes in just like so. So I'm in this sprint stance. I do not go square with my feet and lift 2 hips. Rather, I go away, in, and pop with 1 hip in, like you're a sprinter coming off the blocks. And this will create a realistic way of throwing tough people, okay? So we come out towards our man. From here, we start that initial grip fight situation. I go through on my training partner, I get my initial grip, he pulls his arm free, leaves me with the Ogoshi grip. I put my second hand on. I start moving and pulling, getting head position, okay? Now from here, I step to the apex of the pyramid and I bring my hips through. And that's gonna be the throw. Step 1, step 2. Step 1, step 2. Step 1, step 2. And we go into this lunge position. This is a realistic way to throw someone. So once again, we come up towards our opponent. From here, I go through, draw him in, catch. He goes to pull his arm free, leaves me what I wanted. Pull him around the corner. He tries to step in for Uchimata. I stay away from his hips. I pull him around the corner. I step 1, 2, and drive straight down to the mat. And we get a beautiful Ogoshi, a high amplitude throw that lands you right across your opponent's side. This is a realistic way to get the throw to work. One more time. We come out towards our opponent. I need to access his waist. I'm never just gonna do it right from here, okay? I go through, expose the back, grip, shallow. He goes to pull away, leaves me what I wanted, the second sleeve. We dance and pull. I stay in front of his hips, never standing foolishly here where he can throw me. If he brings his hips across in front of me, I will beat his hips. And we walk the circle until I get my opportunity to step 1, 2, and drive to the mat. And as a result, we get a very realistic, high amplitude throw with almost zero back exposure.